Created with free version for non-commercial use.
Hey, what's up everybody? This is Jason with devslopes.com, and in this video we are going to build the final section of our website. So let's check that out. We're going to build this part down here. Okay, this is called a footer. All right, and the footer tag is new to HTML5 and it acts as a container of its own. All right, it has a default display value of block. All right, so we can just go ahead and put all of our content inside of this. And the kind of things we should be putting inside of our footer is authorship information, contact information, copyright information. We could even add some like back to top links in here. So it looks like we've got a row with 4 columns in here. So let's go ahead and build that. Go ahead and dive into your text
Created
editor
with
here.
free version for non-commercial use.
So to create a footer tag, you simply write footer. And then inside of here, we know we're going to have a giant row with 4 columns. Okay, so we're going to add a div class of row. And then inside of that, let's create our first column. So a div class of call. What do you think it is? We've got 4 columns. It's going to be a div class of 3. 3 times 4 is 12. Easy math. I know I keep repeating myself. All right, so let's go back to the website and see what kind of things that we're going to add to this column. So we've got a header here, and it looks like we've got a list of some text. So I imagine we're going to create a header and then probably use an unordered list to create these 3 texts here. All right, so let's jump back to our text editor. And inside this column, I'm going to go ahead and
created with free version for non-commercial use.
All right, and then just write like company in it. Get some text in there. And remember, the header 1 tags automatically build a margin of top and bottom, and it kind of gives me a display of block as well, so I can actually just stack other information under here. So we've got a list of those 3 texts, right? So why don't we go ahead and create an unordered list here? And then inside of here, we know that we're going to have 3 list items. So the first list item, what did we have? So it was company, about, blog, and careers. So about, blogs, and careers. Awesome. So let's go ahead and check that out real fast. So come to your lightning bolt. We're going to launch this. Scroll to the bottom here.
Created with free version for non-commercial use.
So we've got our header here, and then we've got our 3 lists, our 3 texts. So a good starting point. We're getting somewhere. All right, so the first thing we want to do is let's get some styling on this footer for us. Now, what I'm going to do is I want to add a class to this, and we'll go ahead and call this footsie. Get some footsie going on here. And the reason why I want to add a specific class to this is because if I'm using other footers throughout my website, if this is a bigger website, those other footers might look different. But by adding a specific class to this, we can make a unique style for it. Why don't we go ahead and just add this to the very bottom of everything. All right, so right here. So let's go ahead and grab our footer and then grab it by its class.
Created with free version for non-commercial use.
And then what do we want to happen here? Well, we know that we want a background color, right? And we had this, still doing that. We had this background color of a gray color, and the one that I'm using is 666. But it's cool. It's a nice gray color. All right, so let's check that out. All right, there we go. We're getting somewhere. I like this. Come back over here, and what we want to do now is we want to work down the chain here. So first, we've grabbed the entire footer and we've given it a background. So let's dive down into the next element, which is going to be our header 1. And we know that we want our header 1 to be a little bit larger and have a font color of white. So we'll simply grab our footer by its class, and then we're going to grab the header 1 element.
Created with free version for non-commercial use.
Font color of that white. All right, and then let's add a font size. We want this to be a little bit bigger. Let's do 35 pixels. I like that. Okay. Added the wrong thing here. And save that, and let's go back and check it out. All right, that is looking great. Let's work with this unordered list some here. So we're going to dive into the next element, our unordered list. So we'll simply go footer, grab the class, and the unordered list. Open that up there. And if you remember, those list items had the bullet point on it. We want to go ahead and we want to remove that. So the property we're going to use for that is the list style, and we're going to go ahead and set it to none. All right, and then we also want to make sure that all of this, all the children in here,
created with free version for non-commercial use.
So it lines up with the edge of the company. So all of that is lined up together, and we can go ahead and add a text align of left. All right, perfect. So let's go ahead and check that out. All right, so we've removed the list items, which is great. We put a text align on this of left, but you see we don't have these list items actually aligning to the left. So why don't we go ahead and find out what's happening? And to do that, let's inspect the element. All right, perfect. I'm going to scroll down up here. Let me bring this down just a hair. All right, I'm going to bring it down just a little bit more. So we've got these list items over here. And again, I'm going to right click on it and hit inspect. So it takes me to the list items here. And let's go up the food chain. And
created with free version for non-commercial use.
That's what we're working with. So we come over here. We see that on our unordered list, it's taking our list style of none and the text align of left. So why is it still moved over to the right? So if we come down here, we can actually look at the element here and we see that we've got a padding of 40 on the left side of this. So if I highlight this, check this out. See that green? That's the padding. So what's happening here is, think about this. When you create bullet points, it shoves over to the right, correct? That's because there is a padding on the left side pushing those elements over. So why don't we go ahead, just close this. We'll come to our text editor and let's get rid of that padding. And we can go padding left 0. We don't want any. We can actually overwrite this. So save that and
created with free version for non-commercial use.
When we inspected our element. And scroll down to the bottom and voila, check that out. Everything is now lined up to the left for us. So now let's dive into these list items and add some color, font size, and spread them out a little bit. All right, so this is looking good. So now we're gonna dive down a little bit deeper. Grab the element by its class, the unordered list, and now we're working with list items. So we know that we want the color of this to be white. All right, and we need the font size to be a little bit bigger. Let's see, we made the font size 35 there. Let's, I want to throw in something that I haven't used before. Let's do 22 pixels. And what else did we want to do? We wanted to add some spacing between those. So to do that, let's go ahead and add
created
a line
with
height.
free version for non-commercial use.
Line height, and we've been using, I think the default one is 1, so why don't we just bump it up a bit and use 1.2. All right, we've created a lot of stuff and we don't know what it looks like, so let's see what it looks like. All right, so that looks good. I think I want to add a little bit more line height to this. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. I want them spaced out a little bit more. Let's bump this up to a 1.5. Okay, that works. That's better for me. And if you haven't noticed, we toggle a lot between our text editor and the browser because we're always making little changes and we like to swap back and forth. So totally normal. All right, so what I'm going to do now is, now that we've created this, why don't we go ahead and grab this column, copy it, and then come to the closing column div tag right here.
Created with free version for
Press
non-commercial
enter.
use.
We're going to copy it 3 more times to create our 4 rows. So there's 1. Press enter. There's 2, 3 more times total. And so that gives us 4 columns. And in this example, I'm going to go ahead. I'm not going to waste my time making all these things unique. We'll just keep it the same. All right, so let's come back here and refresh. Now we've got our 4 columns in here. But wait a minute. We've got this thing snugged up to the left side here. So what we need to do is we need to take these columns and we need to shift it over. And there's a couple of things that we can do here. Let's come back to our text editor and let's look at this a little bit and see what's going on. So we've got this column 3 and I want the content in it to shift over. All right, so I could try targeting this and maybe add a block display to it.
Created with free version for non-commercial use.
But we've already got a text align left, and that's going to overwrite that, and it's going to put everything centered, and that's not what we want to happen. So let's bump up a level here and actually just target the footer itself. So because we've got this footer with this special class on it, let's get everything in it because we have all these columns that exist in our entire footer. Let's take all of that content and push it over to the right. So pop quiz here. To do this, to push the content over to the right side, what kind of left spacing do we want to use? Do we want to use a margin or a padding? Well, first, let's try a margin. Maybe you guessed margin. Let's see what happens with a margin here. And I'm going to add probably a left of like 10%. And so
Created
what I'm
with
saying
free version
is
for non-commercial
this
use.
entire container that we have of 100%, I want to just take 10%, make a gap of 10%. All right, let's see what that does. That is not what we wanted, and let's talk about why. So we grabbed our footer element and we said we want a space of 10%. And so it went outside of our footer and it created a space to the left outside of the container, right? Outside of that footer, and it pushed everything over and created this big space, which we did not want to happen. So what we want to do is change this to a padding because that's going to keep everything inside of the element and just add some space inside of it and let everything move over to the right. So go ahead and highlight the margin and we're going to add padding instead. And let's see how that works out. Perfect. That is exactly
Created with free version for non-commercial use.
We created space inside of the footer and we took everything and we pushed it over. So go ahead and inspect this element. Let's come down here and I want to show you what's going on here. So let's come to the container and you can see the green off to the left side. And so we created a padding inside of it to push it over. All right. So that's how that worked. So this is looking great. This is exactly how I want it to show on desktop. Let's see what happens when we take this to a mobile state. We'll scroll down here and we still have these 4 columns. All right. We don't want this to happen. So let's come into our mobile, our media query. Remember when we grabbed all these columns here and we set them to a width of 100% and a margin of 0? I want to show you a slightly different way that
Created
we can
with
work
free version for non-commercial use.
These columns here. So we can technically come down here. Let's make a space. So instead of grabbing the very specific column and working with it, we can actually just add an extra class to our column. div class. So let's call this mobile stack. That's the first thing that came to mind. I don't know why. So let's go ahead and copy this. And inside of every one of our column 3s, go ahead and paste it. All right, and then the last one here. Excellent. So what I've done here is instead of targeting my specific column 3 class, I've now created a new class to work with. And here's why. So go ahead and grab the div, and then by the specific class, mobile stack, create our brackets
Created
here.
with free version
so
for non-commercial
we're grabbing
use.
this element, skipping the column 3, and specifically attaching to this class. And now what I want to do is I don't want to give these a width of 100% and have all these little information things stack on top of each other 4 times. I'd rather take this and give it a width of 50%. All right, and then make sure that these things stack on top of each other in a block display. And the reason why I did this is, say you're building a larger website and you have a bunch of column 3s all over the place. You're using a bunch of column 7s, 6s, 5s, and 4s. Do you really want every single one of these columns to all of a sudden display with 100% width when it's in a mobile state? You may not. So what I've done is I've created a specific class on this, and I can grab it and give it my own
Created with
mobile
free
state
version for non-commercial
displaying.
use.
So let's save this and come back to here. I'm going to refresh the browser. Check that out. Absolute magic, right? So I recommend in the future, instead of grabbing the specific column classes, which we've added specific column widths to, go ahead and just add a class onto it. Create a space, build another class, and then for your mobile states, you can go ahead and add your display rules. All right, so that's a wrap. We have completed this beautiful website in this CSS section all the way from top to bottom here. And then on desktop, it looks beautiful as well. So that is a wrap for this section. Congratulations, we have finished this website from beginning to end, built it in sections to make sure it looks good on desktop, and then taking each section at a time and making sure it works good on mobile.
Created with free
so that
version
as
for
we
non-commercial
keep
use.
building, everything works as it should. So that's it. Congratulations. Let's move on.
Created with free version for non-commercial use.